Alright, so next week the new Alchemy set is coming out, the one for Karlov Manor, and we got a couple of preview cards. I love Alchemy. I know a lot of people don't, but these are some of my favorite cards, and I love playing them in Historic, and sometimes even Timeless, depending on what they are. So we got a couple of previews. I want to check these out and see what these are. I haven't seen a lot of talk about any of them. So all right, it's March 5th. There's going to be 30 cards. We'll get 6 free packs. That's fantastic. That's always great to see. Cards in this release will incorporate new mechanic. Okay, I want to talk about this when we get to it. All right, here's the cards that we got so far. Excavator Sphinx. Flying. When one or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, investigate. Seems pretty good. 1, sacrifice a clue. Seek an instant or sorcery. This seems really good. Especially if you build a deck where you don't have a ton of instants and sorceries, so you kind of know what you're going to get. If, like, you're only running this and then all you have is instants and sorceries, I don't think that's going to be as strong as if you have certain things that you're, like, looking to get. Like, imagine the only instant or sorcery you have in your deck is an extra turn spell. So basically, you're adding Kicker to an extra turn spell where you're gonna be able to like find it and then cast it. Like that would be pretty fantastic. So like something like that, like some type of big haymaker, that seems pretty great. Also, just the like, if you go with the opposite direction, it's just 1 and you're sacrificing the clue. You basically just have something that's like 1 mana, draw a card. It's like if you're able to like give something like guaranteed that you're always hitting, like for 1 extra mana, you're always drawing an extra card every turn. It doesn't seem terrible. That doesn't seem terrible. I'm liking this one. All right. Perforator Crocodile. When Perforator Crocodile enters the battlefield, for each creature your opponents control, conjure a card named Stab Wound onto the battlefield attached to that creature. Okay, so this is Massacre Worm, isn't this? Because Stab Wound is just, I think the spellbook is down here. Or conjure cards. Stab Wound. Okay, Stab Wound, enchanted creature gets -2/-2 at the beginning of the upkeep of that player loses 2 life. So yeah, this is totally, technically this is better than Massacre Worm because it stays on there perpetually. And then they're going to keep losing the -2, or it doesn't stay on perpetual, it stays on as an enchantment. So if it doesn't get rid of the creature immediately, it will at least weaken them a lot. I like this a lot. Like, if you think about this with the Spawning Pod, the card that, like, the Birthing Pod equivalent, if you can Birthing Pod into this seems really good. I think the cycling is there just because it's giant, just so you can cycle this away. I'm not sure why else this has cycling. It doesn't seem to factor in at all to this, but I really like this. Imagine this also with the new Massacre Girl. So you're going to be able to, like, get rid of creatures and then draw a bunch of cards. I like this as like a high-end finisher. This is, I don't know, I think this is fantastic. Guildpact Greenwalker. When Guildpact Greenwalker enters the battlefield, you may choose a creature card in your hand. If you do, that card perpetually incorporates for 1 and a green and gets +4/+4. Multicolored creatures you control have ward +2. This seems pretty fantastic also. Here's one of my big questions, and it talks about it up here. I briefly was looking at this before I started recording. Alright, cards in the set will incorporate a new mechanic that's fitting called Incorporate. A card that incorporates adds an additional mandatory mana cost to another card, and that second card gains additional attributes and text. Incorporate perpetually changes that card's converted mana cost. I'm not sure if this is correct or not. Because that's a big difference. It may not seem like such a huge difference, but there's things that are relevant where this could come into play. Once again, thinking of some of my favorite like Alchemy cards and ones that I play in Historic. There's Kami of Mourning, which a creature in play or in your graveyard perpetually gets whenever a creature of higher mana cost is put into your graveyard. It comes back into play. If this can change the converted mana cost of cards, this might interact with some weird things in an interesting way. There's also things that trigger, like based on like if you play a card of like converted mana cost like 4 or 5, that's pretty great. The 2 mana to give something +4/+4, like if you're running this in some kind of like where this is towards the top end, that's pretty great. Like, and you're having a bunch of like, now Alana War Elf for 3 mana is a 5/5. Like a Haywire Might is like a 5/6. Like this seems pretty fantastic. And then multicolored creatures. I mean, that's kind of the give and take here is that you want to play this with a bunch of cheap creatures, and then it wants to reward you for playing multicolored creatures. If you had a bunch of like cheap 2-drops that were multicolored, this seems really good. I'm curious to see the actual ruling, and we're gonna have to test that to see if that's how that works. But if you're able to generate mana and you're able to like put in any type of like long game, this seems really really good. Being able to just pump things, that seems pretty fantastic. It is only 1 card in your hand one time, so maybe it's not as fantastic as I'm thinking. It's not like all cards in your hand perpetually gain, because there was a card that specializes. I can't think of what it was called, but there was a white card that when it comes into play, all cards in your hand perpetually get +1/+1, and he costs like 2 mana. He was pretty fantastic too. Okay, Sprout Watch Dryad. At the beginning of each combat, Sprout Watch Dryad gains flying until end of turn if a creature you control or a card in your hand has flying. Okay, gains flying until end of turn if a creature you control or a card in your hand has flying. Oh, if you control also. The same is true for First Strike, Double Strike, Death Touch, Haste, Hexproof, Indestructible, Lifelink, Menace. This seems pretty great also. This reminds me obviously of Odric. It's only giving it to itself. But the fact that it can also touch your hand seems pretty good. I'm not totally sure where you put this. The 1 colorless and 2 green. Like, obviously, if you're holding an Atraxa, this is fantastic because you're going to get like a giant like ability creature. Does it have Trample, Vigilance, Lifelink? I like this in concept. I'm not sure how good this is actually going to be because you need the other things to be able to like fuel this. I'm just not sure what deck is gonna want this. I might be surprised, like especially if you can give it Double Strike. Like once again, if you can have a 3/3 like Double Strike or 3/3 Double Strike with flying, but what has Double Strike and flying that is cheap where you're gonna want this? I'm not totally sure on this one. This is one I'm not told on. This is the one that you may have seen some buzz about online because of the wording of this. Juggle the performance. Each player discards their hand, then conjures a duplicate of each of 7 random cards from the library of the player to their right into their hand. The duplicates perpetually gain. Mana of any type can be spent to cast this. So the thing that everyone is harping on or like caught is the player to their right. Obviously, that implies multiplayer. This card might be worded this way simply to plan for the future if there ever is multiplayer. It is a digital only card, so that clearly shows that they're like thinking of multiplayer at some point. I don't know if that's going to be immediately with like the release of the set. That'd be a huge announcement, and like a huge change to the way that the game plays. But it is interesting. But in 1v1, it's obviously just going to work where it's going to it's a Wheel of Fortune kind of. It's basically you're going to give your you're going to draw 7 new cards from your opponent's library. Your opponent is going to draw 7 new cards from your library. The mana of any type can be spent to cast a spell. Obviously, that's needed, but that makes this really interesting to where you play this. Because, like, obviously, wheels are best. Like, Wheel of Fortune is best played when you have 0 cards in hand. So then it's basically a draw 7. But your opponent is drawing 7 too. And the only way you're going to have 0 cards in hand is if you're playing a bunch of cheap things or you're discarding a bunch. Like if you're able to discard a ton of stuff really quickly and then get this out, like so you have higher cost things. But then you're getting but then again, if you can have like a discard outlet, if you have a free discard outlet where you can where you're able to just take cards in your hand and turn them into some other kind of value, this seems really good. Like a zombie infestation, like what else is in Arena that is like that? I'll have to think about this. Like I think Noose Constrictor's in there, but now you're in Jund and you're doing some pretty weird stuff there. Because you're gonna give like if you're just doing this in some type of like, let's say you're doing goblins and you add this, like you just splash this in, you're just going to give your opponent a ton of goblins that they're going to be able to play for free. So all you're going to do is like muck up the battlefield with a bunch of like super fast things. You need something where, like, it doesn't matter what you're getting in your hand. You're just benefiting from having cards in your hand. So that's kind of my gut instinct, is that you want to do this with something where you're going to be able to discard. Note that we have, I know Modern Horizons 3 has Madness, because we've seen the new Eldrazi with Madness, so I don't know if it's going to be like specific to Eldrazi, but that would obviously help field this. And I'm 99% sure that Modern Horizons is going into Arena, so I want to double check that for me, but I think it would. So that is super interesting there. So what's this? We got 5 of our 30 cards, and remember with Alchemy, there's no commons. It's only uncommons, rares, and mythics. So we've already seen, what, 2 mythics here? Okay, interesting. I'm interested to see the rest of the cards. Obviously, it's going to be in the next couple days or so. But this one I'm pretty excited for, like this batch. The last batch I was not super excited for. There was the one, there's like 2 dinosaurs that were pretty great. The one that whenever they had Enrage, so whenever a creature was dealt damage, it like perpetually made your creatures bigger. And then the dinosaur that drafted a fight spell was pretty great. It was like a fight spell and then like a destroy target creature with flying. I thought that one was pretty awesome. But these I'm feeling pretty good about. Like, I really like this Sphinx and I really like this Crocodile. Like, obviously it's a one-of that you like intentionally go to get. And the Guildpact Greenwalker, I don't know, there's something super interesting there. So I'm curious to see the rest of the cards, but this is our first look. And it's just early next week. So start getting your rares and mythic wildcards ready, because we're going to have to craft some of these and see how they play. So are you excited at all? Probably not, but I am. And you'll see me playing some of these. So good luck and have a good day.